Hello, my name is José Siqueira and I'm from University of Brasilia and I'm presenting Guide for Artificial Intelligence Ethical Requirements Elicitation, the RE4AI Ethical Guide. In this presentation, I present a brief introduction, the methodology used, the development of the guide, its overview and evaluation, some final remarks, and finally, future works. The evolution of emergence of software that makes use of artificial intelligence techniques, mostly machine learning, amplifies the manifestation of accidents and the awareness of the associated ethical issues. Many are the cases where AI-based systems developed without proper ethical cautions are prone to negatively impact society at large in diverse fields, such as criminal justice, education, and healthcare. In the literature, ethics in AI has been addressed in large part through ethical guidelines and principles. Even though they are necessary, little practical directions exist for developers to apply in real context. Most part of available guidelines are soft laws, that is, non-binding laws. No legal consequence nor motivation exists for developers in the area of AI ethics. Also, developers do not receive adequate training within development projects nor during their academic studies. It seems that during the requirements elicitation phase, there is a greater interaction between different actors involved in software development and its use, providing a rich environment for debate on ethical issues, and there is a reduction in additional work by considering ethical issues in the early stages of software development rather than as an afterthought. In this sense, Vakuri and colleagues presented a deck of cards named ECOLA to operationalize AI ethics in the first phase of software development, composed of a set of 21 cards distributed along 7 ethical principles in a static PDF format. By the time of the acceptance of this final manuscript, authors of Ecolo method did not provide means of measuring the impact of the use of the tool, nor did they include examples or assessments of the use of the method in practice. To mitigate AI-based systems ethical issues, the aim of this work is to provide a guide for artificial intelligence ethical requirements elicitation, the RE4AI ethical guide. In this manner, we move forward the ECOLA method by providing 26 cards across 11 principles, also providing tools suggestions to implement AI ethics in the content of the cards, as well as extensive supporting material, how to use, principles, tools, and trade-offs. While the ECOLA method is presented only as a deck of cards in a PDF, our guide is developed as a web-based system, allowing interactivity in card selection through filters and comparisons between multiple cards. Our guide will help software development teams to elicit ethical requirements for AI by answering the questions presented in the cards, and the answers will then be user stories, that is, ethical requirements, to be included in the sprint backlog. We use the design science research methodology to understand the problem, develop a prototype, and evaluate it through a survey with undergraduate and graduate students and present results. Please refer to our previous study, also published in this venue, for further concepts, background, and literature review relevant to understand the context of this work, considering that this paper is a continuation of our preceding study. Ethical Perspectives in AI, a two-folded exploratory study from literature and active development projects. For the initial guide criteria, you use the approach devised by Schiff and colleagues and made some adjustments to our study. The proposed guide will be broad by considering different ethical principles and possible tools. Operationalizable by allowing users to elicit requirements and include them in their sprint backlogs in the form of user stories. Flexible, since the cards have open questions and there are no single answers or only one context for applying the guide. Iterative, as users are free to decide the best moment to use the cards and they can be reused with the inclusion of different stakeholders in the process, guided as there will be user documentation, participatory. Different stakeholders and users can be part of the ethical requirements elicitation activity. In this phase, we will follow a set of steps for the development of the guide. First, we delimit the set of ethical principles to be used. Then, we will define the set of possible tools that will serve as suggestion to developers. Finally, we will present the cards that will compose the deck, where each card will comprise a tool and a principle, besides other pertinent information, with the goal of creating a prototype and presenting it. This figure presents an overview of the steps that will guide the process of developing the guide content. In this presentation, we will focus only on an overview of the steps. Several authors have proposed compilations of various ethical guidelines into few principles. To the best of our knowledge, Ryan and Stahl did the most comprehensive compilation with 91 guidelines aimed at developers and users. 11 principles were compiled, and each principle has a number of ethical issues related. Thus, in the development of the guide, it will be taken as central axis the principles listed by Ryan and Stahl. In this next step, we explore 21 tools identified in our previous work, and we identified 11 tools that assist the implementation of AI ethics that will be presented in the content of the cards based on their relationship with the set of principles. We note that there is a trend in tools operationalizing the principles of transparency and justice and fairness. Supplementary material is available, presenting tables for the reasoning of these steps. The cards of our guide will be separated by principles and ethical issues, where each principle may have more than one ethical issue. Thus, more than one card will be available for each principle. Each card is composed of 4 parts. Preamble. There is an observation of why it is important to address this issue, add something positive to be achieved that reflects on the user in the end, or provides an overview of that topic. Issues to be addressed. There is no single direct and objective indication of what developers should do, but there are questions which users of the guide need to discuss in order to operationalize ethics in AI. Illustration of this topic. We further illustrate the issue by offering a case where ethical requirements were not considered and led to incidents, or the illustration of the topic in a specific context. Tool suggestion. We offer the option of available tools in the refined set of tools. However, it was seen that the set of tools does not cover all the principles in the guide. That is, this field is not mandatory and will not appear in all the cards, as there are no tools available for all ethical issues. The guide for artificial intelligence ethical requirements elicitation was implemented as a web-based system, and in this figure we present the initial screen of the guide where its subdivisions are present. Introduction, presenting a brief introduction on how to use it. Guide, presenting the set of cards. Principles, presenting all the principles present in the guide. Tools, presenting which tools are present in the guide related to the principles. Trade-offs, presenting which trade-offs may occur when developing AI-based systems that take ethical issues into consideration. And about, briefly presenting the author's information about the guide and references used. By clicking Start Guide, the user will be presented by default with all the cards and the options to filter or compare the cards, as illustrated in this figure. If 2 or more cards are selected, the user can click Compare Cards on the right, where only those cards will be displayed. The user can then click Start Again to return to the previous screen, where all cards are displayed. In this figure, we illustrate the scenario where 4 cards of different principles are selected and compared. Access to the guide is possible at this link, and you are free to view, download, and modify the source code through the guide's GitHub. The objective of the evaluation of the guide through a survey is to verify the viability of the guide, as well as the perceptions of users about the content provided. A survey was conducted with undergraduate and graduate students of the disciplines of data science, requirements analysis, artificial intelligence and cognitive computing, and artificial intelligence of the first semester of 2021 at the University Center of Brasilia, Brazil. 40 completed questionnaires were analyzed. In this presentation, we will focus on the main evaluation discussion. We identified 6 perceived positive points, such as the support information presented is adequate for understanding and use. The questions contained in the cards are easy to understand. They are objective and clear. The use of the guide helps the creation of user stories through the questions in the cards. There is an increase in ethical awareness through the use of the guide. Applicability of the guide in the requirements elicitation phase. And there is an interest from the participants in using the guide in the requirements elicitation phase in their future projects. We observed 5 negative points and suggestions for improvement offered by the participants, such as the suggested tools are not known by the participants, very extensive and broad guides suggesting a reduced version with a reduction of the scope, and with cards and tools oriented to a particular context or problem. To divide the guide in categories for the phases of documentation, tests, codification, and maintenance, and make the guide available in other languages. Finally, offer an order of importance of the principles, like prioritization of the principles. So, in this work, we presented the RE4AI ethical guide, its development and evaluation. The guide is composed of 26 cards containing 11 principles as a web-based system allowing interactivity with its source code publicly available. Preliminary findings from the survey evaluation suggest that the guide is perceived to be of great interest by the participants, receiving an overall positive evaluation. The implementation of ethics in AI is an ongoing challenge, which should not be seen as a final goal that can be objectively achieved, as a checklist to be completed, but as a development process that is a set of repeatable procedures and re-evaluated on a recurring basis. The operationalization of ethical principles and guidelines in AI is subject to the subjectivity of those involved in the elicitation process, and more importantly, in the developers. Among other features, we have tried to develop the guide so that it is perceived by users as a reflective development process, which helps AI practitioners to understand their own subjectivity and biases within a given set of circumstances. We hope to contribute in the development of future research in the context of AI ethics, both in academia and industry, and in choosing tools and processes that support the implementation of ethics in AI-based systems, as well as raising awareness about the various ethical issues involved in the use of AI-based systems and their challenges in the development process. For future works, further evaluation and examples of use of the guide are needed in different contexts and propose improvements. The elaboration of a catalog or database of ethical requirements in AI devised by the use of our guide. It is interesting to provide ways to perform traceability between ethical requirements and code, as well as examples of these mappings. To evaluate the application of the guide when it's desired to evaluate AI-based systems already developed and in use by users. Overall, our work is an important cornerstone for enabling and steering such future research through the presentation and use of the proposed guide, among other aspects. Thank you very much.